In the heart of West Africa, Ghana stands at a crossroad of transformation. After decades of political promises and systematic corruption, President John Dramani Mahama has made a bold move that could reshape the nation's relationship with its most precious assets, land. This is the story of Ghana's state land reform, a tale of broken promises, renewed hope, and delicate balance between political pragmatism and genuine change. For generations, Ghana's state lands have been both a blessing and a curse. Rich in potential, these public assets have too often become the playground of the powerful, where corruption thrives and ordinary citizens pay the price. The pattern has been depressingly familiar. Politicians and well-connected individuals have exploited Ghana's land administration system, turning public resources into private gain. Stakeholders in the land sector have said that the lack of enforcement of the provisions in the Land Act 2020, Act 1036, was a major catalyst for corruption in the sector. The result? A system where citizens are lured into purchasing land from wrong persons, and in some instances, documents are signed and stamped by officials of the Landcommission. This isn't merely a problem of bureaucratic inefficiency. It is a crisis that strikes at the heart of Ghana's development. When public officials can buy state assets with impunity, when land deals happen in the shadows of power corridors, and when ordinary Ghanaians find themselves victims of fraudulent transactions, the very foundation of good governance crumbles. The human cost is immeasurable. Families lose their life savings to fraudulent land deals. Communities are displaced as politically connected individuals grab prime locations. Small businesses struggle to secure legitimate plots for expansion. The poor, as always, bear the heaviest burden in this cycle of corruption. The 2024 promise. During his 2024 presidential campaign, John Dramani Mahama made a promise that resonated across Ghana. In quote, "No appointee or public office holder will buy state assets in his administration."
You must not go and buy state property. Anybody serving in my government will not be allowed to buy a state asset. Nobody serving in my government will buy a state asset. Vehicles or cars or buildings or land or anything, nobody serving in our government will be allowed to buy a state asset.
Closed quotes. It was a pledge that acknowledged the systemic rot while offering hope for transformation. The promise wasn't made in a vacuum. Ghanaians had grown weary of seeing their leaders enrich themselves through state resources while preaching austerity to the masses. Mahama's commitment represented more than political rhetorics. It was a recognition that genuine reform required leaders to lead by example. When Mahama won the presidency, expectations were high. Would this be different? Could a politician who had previously held power break the cycle that had plagued Ghana for decades? The January moratorium. True to his word, President John Dramani Mahama imposed a ban on state land transactions on January 10, 2025, freezing allocations, leases, and sales to enable a thorough review of Ghana's land administrative system. The move sent shockwaves through Ghana's political and business establishment. For 8 months, the Lands Commission of Ghana was ordered to halt the sale of all state lands, creating space for what the administration called comprehensive reforms. It was a dramatic pause in a system that had operated with questionable transparency for far too long. The moratorium was without controversy. Critics argued it stifled legitimate business activities and development projects. Supporters saw it as a necessary intervention to clean up a corrupt system. What was clear was that Mahama was signaling his administration would not tolerate business as usual. Then came September 2nd, 2025, a date that may prove pivotal in Ghana's governance history. President John Dramani Mahama lifted the ban on state land transaction under new measures designed to ensure transparency and accountability. But this wasn't a simple return to old ways. President declared that government will no longer tolerate business as usual culture that has long plagued Ghana's lands administration system. The lifting came with new reforms aimed at ensuring transparency and accountability, reopening opportunities for sale, lease, and processing of state lands. The new framework represents what Mahama administration calls a disciplined era in a land administration. It includes enhanced oversight mechanism, stricter documentation requirement, and what official promises will be unprecedented transparency in all state lands transactions. Cynics might ask, is this a genuine reform or political theater? The answer lies not in the promises made, but in the implementation that follows. Ghana has heard reform promises before. The test will be whether this time it is truly different. As Ghana embarks on this new chapter in land administration, the stakes couldn't be higher. The success or failure of these reforms will be measured not in political speeches or policy documents, but in the lived experiences of ordinary Ghanaians. Will families finally have confidence in land transactions? Will businesses find a transparent system that will reward merit over connections? Will the poorest Ghanaian gain access to opportunities that should flow from effective land administration? President John Mahama has lifted the ban, but the real work begins now. Ghana's journey toward transparent land administration is far from over. It's just beginning. The world is watching. Ghana is hoping, and history will judge whether September 2nd, 2025 marked a genuine turning point or just another false dawn in the long struggle for good governance.